Hello and welcome to Freedom Watch. I'm Judge Andrew Napolitano here defending freedom, defending your natural rights, and defending your right to have a government that stays within the confines of the Constitution. Arizona's law requiring police to check for illegal immigrants has generated protests. The left largely wants illegals left alone. Conservatives and libertarians are somewhat divided, with some seeking looser, more open immigration as a necessary part of free trade, and others seeing illegals as a growing burden on the welfare state and a threat to the rule of law and national sovereignty. I can sympathize with many of those worries and have many colleagues who share them. But a draconian crackdown on illegal immigrants not only raises troubling constitutional issues, but will inevitably ensnare legal immigrants and Americans who run afoul of police, who may be eager to demand papers from those who seem too foreign. But as Chicago White Sox manager Ozzie Guillen, himself an immigrant from Venezuela, recently put it, people don't come here for a bad reason. They don't come here to do bad stuff. They come here to make money. They come here to work. And they come here to make this country better. Well said. Joining me now are two fellow free marketers and believers in limited government who nonetheless find themselves on the opposite sides of this issue. Jack Hunter, who approves of the controversial Arizona law, is a radio host and columnist for the American Conservative magazine, the Charleston City Paper, and other publications. Don Boudreaux is chairman of the economics department at George Mason University and is what the anti-immigration side calls an open borders advocate. Gentlemen, welcome to Freedom Watch.
Good to be with you today, Judge.
Jack, to you first. Would this problem that we have, as you see it, with people who are here illegally and sapping wealth from the government, largely go away if we didn't have the welfare state, the nanny state that we have today?
Well, of course, that's the first and biggest culprit is the welfare state. The social safety net is what they like to call it, that many people who are in this country illegally are attracted to and they do benefit from. I heard you earlier, you had mentioned about draconian immigration laws. My take on what's going on in Arizona right now is that it's not draconian at all, but it's basically the state stepping up and doing the job that the federal government won't do. It is the federal government's responsibility to regulate citizenship and enforce the borders. They're not doing it, and Arizona has a heck of a problem on its hands with 600,000 illegal aliens, and they're just stepping in where the federal government is not living up to its responsibility. The way the law reads, if you're arrested for a crime, for instance, here in South Carolina, we've had illegal alien drunk drivers, if you will, who are then let go because the local authorities say, well, this is out of our jurisdiction.
Actually, the way the law reads doesn't require an arrest. It requires lawful contact between the police and the person whose papers they're looking for. I can tell you, as a judge who tried hundreds and hundreds of cases in which the police had contact with individuals, they are extremely adept and extremely skillful at creating contact when they use it as a pretext to ask somebody for something. Do you remember a time in American history where the police, quote, asked you for your papers? I'm not talking about a driver's license to be on a state highway. I'm talking about somebody on the street corner who had to prove a negative, namely that they were not there illegally.
I don't, and I certainly wouldn't support that. The way I read the law, and I've read the written text, that they have to be stopped for something else prior, and that's a major distinction. Look, I agree with my libertarian friends. I want to abolish the Patriot Act. I do not support national identification or real ID. I would even abolish the Department of Homeland Security. But in the grand scheme of these things, this seems like a very tame corrective from my view.
Don Boudreaux, why do you think most immigrants come here? Do they come here because they're looking for a freebie, or do they come here because they're looking to work hard and make a better life for themselves and their families and their children?
That question can be answered by looking at the immigration laws themselves, the vast bulk of which are spent trying to stop immigrants from working. More than half of Arizona's statute, the statute that's now the subject of this big brouhaha, it spends a lot of text trying to stop employers in Arizona from lawfully hiring immigrants. These people are coming here to work. The vast majority of them want to work. If we're so worried about them coming to suck off the welfare state or commit crime, then at least get rid of the restrictions on their working. People who are able to work legally are going to be a lot less likely to commit crimes.
When my grandparents came here, and 3 of my 4 grandparents came here, They simply stopped through Ellis Island. Their parents signed a piece of paper with their names and their birth dates and birthplaces on it. A doctor made sure that they didn't have any communicable diseases and were vaccinated, such as was the practice of medicine at the time, and they were let go. There wasn't a quota. They didn't have to demonstrate anything. They didn't have to get papers. They didn't have to satisfy anybody for anything. They prospered and produced families and obeyed the law and became American citizens. Why don't we have that today? Why do we have quotas today and people that want to build walls around the country?
Well, the reason we have it, of course, is because labor unions got very powerful and they didn't want competition for labor. But you said earlier I was an open borders guy. I suppose that's right, but the regime that I want to return to is precisely the regime that America had for most of its history, the regime that your grandparents came in under, the regime that my great-great-parents came in under. It's not really open borders. There are checkpoints. People come through them in an orderly way, but there are no numerical restrictions. If you don't have communicable disease, if you're not a known violent criminal, you get in. That's what we should have now. We should stop spending resources trying to track down people for trying to work in America. You know, we have to draw a line in the sand somewhere. I understand the concerns of the people of Arizona, but every one of those problems that they're complaining about now, they are the direct result. They are caused by the current restrictive regime imposed by Washington. And we have to draw a line in the sand. I don't want to see further restrictions imposed because these other unnecessary and immoral restrictions are in place. Let's get rid of the restrictions completely.
Jack Hunter, how about that, Jack? How about letting these people work and letting people hire them because they perform work that Americans might not otherwise want to do?
Well, I think Don's comments sort of touched on where the real divide is here between some of us more traditionally conservative-minded folks like myself and libertarians like Don.
Right.
This argument has turned into not just whether the Arizona law or not is just or constitutional, but whether we should even have borders or not. Should we have open borders or not? It seems like that's an entirely different debate.
Let's go to the free market argument, Jack. Should an employer be able to hire whoever he wants at whatever wage the employee is willing to sell his labors for, or should the employee have to fit within the government's quota before the employer can hire him?
I do believe he should be able to hire him for whatever wage he's willing to pay, but I think we need, part of being a sovereign nation, we need to determine who's a citizen and who's not. I think that's very important.
Professor Boudreau, is it true that if immigrants couldn't do the work that they do at the rates that we now pay them, tomatoes and apples might be $10 each?
Well, they'd certainly be more expensive. I don't know what they would be. Work would get done. But look, what Jack just said, I disagree with it in part. For most of America's history, people could come here and work on whatever terms. And that worked wonderfully during the 19th century and early part of the 20th century. And there's no reason it wouldn't work today. And that's what we should. That's the regime that we should return to. It's none of the government's business who I associate with or who I hire on my own private property, in my own home, in my own business firm.
Jack Hunter, do you agree with that? It's none of the government's business who you hire and who you associate with on your own property, whether it's your backyard or whether it's the floor of your warehouse.
In general, I do agree with that, and I want as little government as possible. But I do think it is. I think Justin Raimondo, our friend Justin Raimondo at antiwar.com, had mentioned recently that the federal government's only duty is to carry its only legitimate function is securing and protecting our borders. That's certainly an old-fashioned conservative belief, and I happen to subscribe to it. I think it's very important.
How difficult would it be, Professor Boudreau, to dismantle the welfare state? I mean, you'd need half of Congress with the mindset of Ron Paul for that to happen.
You would, but look, we also have to keep in mind the fact that these people want to come over here and work. Even under today's very restrictive rules, they still work, they still pay taxes, and they expand the size of the economic pie. Just get rid of the restrictions we have on them now. They would pay more taxes. They would expand the size of the economic pie even more. And sure, the welfare state might still be in existence, but these people aren't coming over here to sop off the welfare state. Again, if they were, we wouldn't spend so much, the government wouldn't spend so much time and resources trying to prevent them from working.
Jack Hunter, Don Boudreau, thanks very much for joining us.
Glad to be here
pleasure.
today, Judge.
From New York, defending freedom. Until the next time, stay free, America.